Welcome back to the Physio Foundations podcast for another week where we talk about the knowledge and skills that provide the foundation of expert clinical practice. So this is a special episode. It's for anyone who is studying or working overseas or in Australia or whatever country you're based in, but who's in a different culture or using a different language in their studies or work, and particularly a different language in their studies or work to what they use at home or what they're used to using. It's anyone really from a culturally or linguistically diverse background who's trying to study or work and at the same time improve their clinical communication skills. And so I've got a guest on this week who has done a marvelous job over the last 6 or so years of really improving and developing their clinical communication whilst faced with the challenges of doing that in another language. It's a really amazing story. So before I introduce Seven, this week's guests, a couple of words for me. It's respect is one word from me. Respect for you if you are doing this, if you're taking this pathway. It's one thing to complete a demanding health degree or a health professions degree. I think that in itself is an achievement, but it's a whole nother thing to complete a health professions degree in another language and in a different country or different culture and environment. And there are a lot of challenges associated with it that we want to talk about. So today we're going to explore some of those challenges and some of the tips that Seven has for how she did it. And without further ado, Seven Shan, welcome to Physio Foundations.
Thank you for the invite. It's lovely to have the chance to chat about it.
So good to catch up with you again. So how are you going? How is life 2 years out of into your physiotherapy career?
I think my life is going quite well. I do really enjoy being a physiotherapist. And I've been working 2 different networks now. Like I've been, working with different team members, working with different patient population. I all find it really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Let's go back a step. Tell us a bit about you and your background and your qualifications and what's led you up to this point now.
So I'm Seven, but my original name is Monash Shan. I'm from China, and I got Seven from actually my Chinese name, because in China you say your surname first instead of first name first, which is weird, but surname first and then first name. So it's actually Shan Wing Wen. And if you say it fast enough, it sounds like Shan Wen, Shan Wen. So it's quite similar to Seven. So since secondary school, I guess my friends have been calling me Seven, and then my parents and I was like, oh, this is actually a cool name. So yeah, here we go. This is my preferred English name. So Seven.
And it's just stuck. Yeah. Do you use Seven everywhere, professionally and at work and everywhere?
Yeah. So on my name tag and most of the emails, it's all Seven now. So people do find it like, oh, so Seven, how would you pronounce it? I was like, just as the number 7. They were like, oh, okay, that's quite special.
Yeah, it is a cool name. Now, I actually haven't asked you the origin story. So that was on my list of things I wanted to ask you, or I wanted to know. That's really interesting. Tell us a bit more about what your background and so what led you to wanting to study physiotherapy and to come to Australia to study physio?
I think when I was back in high school, I really enjoy biology, especially like physiology, those related to human, like we did a little bit DNA and the heart function. I found it quite like I'm really interested in that. Like before that, I'm not interested in like biology at all. Like I'm more like a maths, finance kind of like person, and always believe I will study business and become a businesswoman. But I think I took that biology course, and it's really changed my interest. So I think that biology course really like changed my thought about myself in the future. I really want to be in a profession related to human, because I feel like it's really applicable. Like what I learn, I can actually apply it to myself, or like I can understand it. Like, so I think that's the reason why I choose to start physiotherapy because it is kind of related to human. The reason like I didn't choose to study medicine or anything is just when I was a kid, I cut myself and then I saw blood coming out and then I was like, and I think I'm traumatized. So I don't want to see a lot of like blood and stuff like that. So I feel like physiotherapy is still helping others and it's kind of medical related, but not a lot of scary stuff.
Well, there's a lot of big influence on people's quality of life and living, but there's not as much life or death. And and it's certainly a different career. Big difference from being a financial person or a businesswoman, just from the biology classes. So it's interesting. A lot of people have those origin stories where they first learned about something. Sometimes it's just going and working and or doing something in high school or going to a physiotherapist as a patient or something that you just flips a switch and you think, I could do that for a career. Yeah. And of course, there's a lot more to it than biology. And one of your strengths is working with people. That's what you do. And we're going to talk about today, the communication strengths that you've developed. And so what was it like when you first arrived in Australia and you had to learn the language, you had to develop the language skills further, and you move here and then you had to start at this. When did you move to Australia? Was it around the time of beginning the course?
Yeah, I think I just moved. Yeah, I think so. I think the course started in February, so I just arrived like a week earlier than the course starts.
A week, so, okay.
Yeah, so I basically booked the flight, come here, set up everything, and then I started the course. I think for the first couple weeks or like first half of a year, because when people don't know what they're going to expect, they are quite brave and then they think everything is just so fun and new. So I think for the first half year, I'm actually really enjoying to talk to people and then trying to figure out their culture and their ways. And I think I'm like quite outgoing, like to make friends. I think that's my first couple months of first half year, just trying to connect with people, and then
So that was fairly enjoyable. It was a bit scary, no doubt, but it was also fun and enjoyable to talk to a lot of people and try to make friends, and that helped.
I would say like for the first couple months, it's more like enjoyable instead of like scary and stuff, because I think when you are going to something new, you never feel like scared. Like it would be like interest to know, like, so I'm quite open and outgoing for the first couple months. And then I think it's couple months afterwards, because you kind of notice that your communication, like although like I've done the English test and make sure I have adequate English, but it's quite different, like the textbook English and then the real life communication is quite different. And then I think physiotherapy is the course we'll do a lot of like case discussion, practical class. Then I slowly to find it like maybe I'm like struggling a little bit.
So let's talk about those challenges and those struggles. So how would you describe your first year as a student, and what parts of being a student were difficult in terms of communication and adjusting?
I think like first of all, like with all the lectures, I think I'm a little bit I find it harder to like understand and grasp all the information. So I have to spend a little bit more time to do preparation, make sure like I can already understand a few like key concepts. So it's kind of easier for me to catch it during the lectures and help me to make that, make it make sense. Like afterwards, you do need to kind of catch up a little bit as well, probably rewatch the videos and just to make sure you understand the whole thing from the lectures. I think the other bit, I found it extremely hard. It's probably during the CBL, so case-based learning,
Yeah.
because that's I think I struggle with that bit the most, because that's the like you need to um think on the spot, and then you need to express it on the spot,
Oh,
and
okay.
then it's kind of like a little bit hard for me at the start, because when I got the idea and then I have to translate it into another language, I kind of already missed the timing already.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah, because
interesting.
when you're in a group discussion, it's not about like um it's about timing as well. Like you need to kind of say it in the right time. Like we're talking about this topic, so you better contribute during that time. Like I think I found it struggling once I figure out the idea and then I trying to translate it. Oh, then move on to another topic already.
Mm.
Um, so I find it quite hard. Yeah.
What tips could you give then for people who are in CBL, or so case-based learning? This doesn't have to be related to physiotherapy training. It could be any study. And you're
Mm,
in a group and you're feeling like you're in that position where you, by the time you think and then translate and then go to talk, people have moved on. Is there any interpersonal skills you've developed or any strategies you've developed working with people so they can help give you some space and bring you in on the conversation and make you a part of it?
I think what I found helpful is like I think it's because of my personality. I like to think about it and then, and then like make sure everything kind of organized and then talk about it. But
Yeah.
I think in like case-based learning or those group discussion, um, probably it is nice if you can present it in an organized way. But I think it's quite hard for us as a second, like English is a second language. So I think it's easier just you step in first without thinking too much about how do I organize it perfectly and stuff. Like try to be nice and clear, just step in first, talk about something you want to bring up first, and then you can try to elaborate. Usually people, they will give you time to elaborate and they'll always ask you questions to clarify and stuff. So I think it will be helpful if you just step in first, like just
Step in first, just begin
yeah, just to
rather than
begin.
wait to have all the thoughts perfectly formulated. And of
Yeah,
course, nobody has that when they talk, but then
yeah.
to do it to translate it as well as an extra step, and you might get left behind.
Mm,
What about talking to, I guess, being an outgoing person, as you said, and talking to a lot of people is going to make people understand you as well.
yeah.
Are there any other strategies you can use to help people understand the position you're in? Perhaps explaining to people that it takes me a little bit longer to formulate my thoughts, and inviting them to bring you in onto the conversation.
I think with the physiotherapy course, it gives you a lot of opportunity to connect with people, to be honest. Like with practical class, you have to kind of break into small groups, and then you're surrounded by like local students. So I try to, talk to them all the time. And then like you can always let them know like you're struggling to understand a certain things, and they're always happy to explain it to
Yeah,
you.
people love to help.
Mm,
You think that I
like I
always
find,
think the best of everyone, eternal optimist, but it's true though, especially in a tight knit community in a group. The more you talk to people and say, "These are the things this is what will help me. These are the things I need help with. This is how you
yeah,
can help me." There's
mm,
certainly the advantage for you that you, as you've said, you're an outgoing person. You quite enjoyed being in a foreign country and meeting all these new people, and you just went up to people and talked to them and talked to the local students, and you will learn a lot by doing that.
mm.
That's certainly something that I've got from that part of the conversation from you. What about what tips could you give for, say, our first year and second year students who are in a similar position to you were in 2017 and 2018 in your first 2 years? What tips could you give them for for studying in general,
Mm,
beyond just communication?
I think have your own study group. It's something
Mm.
really important and really helpful. I think during my study, I always have like a group of study friends. We are even close friends now, like go traveling together and
Oh,
stuff.
good.
But when we were back in uni, we kind of help each other because it is a really good place for us to make sure we learn everything and then prepare for exam because we can go through the practical questions together, or if there's any question, we just messenger each other or messenger in the group. Like, oh, I got this question. Anyone know? Like, so we can get the chance to ask each other questions, and kind of it's a really nice way kind of to refresh your memory as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And another part of the course that you were a part of was the clinical communication support program that Jo Corbett runs here. So I wanted to talk about that. So you were someone who attended a lot of those sessions, and you really improved your communication skills through all the work you did and all the group work you were doing, and of course your clinical placements. But those sessions played a part of them. What made you decide to go along to those sessions? You're obviously really busy. There's lots of competing demands for your time. What made you want to go along to attend those sessions?
I think first of all, like my study group, like this, like majority of them is from like another country as well. They are all international students, so kind of that gives me an influence that I want to go with them as well. And secondly, I think I feel like I just need a little bit more time, a little bit more support to understand stuff. So I think clinical support program, they give you the chance to ask questions, and then they give you the chance to practice certain skills, and also give the chance to to work with your friends or work with other like colleagues and under the supervision of a lecturer. So I think it's a really good opportunity.
So for listeners, this is a program that we run where students from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds have an additional opportunity to practice their clinical communication. And I always feel like the communication aspects of what we do are a big part of what we do. So the focus is often on clinical skills, and they're not separate from communication. How much of what we do in the clinic is based on rapport, interpersonal skills, and communication about clinical concepts. Can you remember some specific things that you've learned by going along to those sessions? Like there's something that you now use in the clinic that you learned back then?
That's a long time ago.
It is a while ago.
I think what I learned, it's definitely all blending to my practice now. I think before my placement, we have like CCSP sessions to help us how to make, like before we start the placement, how we connect with our supervisor, make sure our placement runs smoothly, like during the placement, how we communicate with our supervisor. I think the main thing I've learned is try to be open and honest with my learning needs and what kind of support I need, which is kind of transferable what I'm doing now as a grade one when I'm talking with my senior in our fortnightly supervision, like being open to like what kind of support I need and how to communicate with my senior. Yeah,
sure. What about getting specific feedback on communication skills? So it's something we could sometimes take for granted that we just talk to people. But if you're doing this in a different language, it's more challenging. So how important is it to get feedback on those communication skills?
I do feel like, I think it is important to get feedback about your communication skills. I think not so much now because my English pretty much functional enough for me to do my jobs. But when I was like a student, like prepping for my placement, CCSP, it's probably like a good place where like there is local students. I think mainly like lecturers, they will give you feedback around how can you phrase that question a little bit more open instead of, keep it like kind of closed. How would you phrase that question a little bit? Or like, how can you format like your assessment findings and explain it to your patients? I find it quite useful, like you find this, and which means this and that, or like because of this, so I'm doing to this. So I think there is some kind of like format, how you think about it, and then how you can explain it to your patients, which we kind of get practice in CCSP education. Yeah. And I think with practice during your placement, you can definitely use them more and more and find what's suitable for you and come up with your own way.
Yeah, we have exercises in the sessions where you're given some findings and your job is to explain them in patient-friendly, person-friendly terms to a person. And actually, that's difficult to do if you haven't practiced it. And extra challenging if you're doing it in a second language, for example. That's hard to do sometimes, isn't it? To actually say, well, I've just learned a physical examination test.
Yeah.
What does it mean? And how do I actually explain it to somebody? That's a good example.
Definitely, because I think English as a second language, when you learn physio, like you will consider us like a language as well. And like when I learn like knee flexion, like hip flexion, I wouldn't thought, it's actually like a jargon. It's not like when you say this to the patient, they wouldn't understand what you're talking about. So I think it's kind of going to placement and CCSP kind of made me realize, okay, so this is actually just physio language. It is actually not how you communicate with your patient.
That's such a good point. It's such an important point that you need to almost learn two different ways of saying things. There's the jargon of communicating this in a medical record or to another professional of knee flexion deficit, for example. And then there's how you talk to a person, which is your knee is not bending as much as the other side. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's a really good example. How many languages do you speak, by the way?
I only speak two, so Chinese and English.
Chinese and English. I just thought I'd ask because you've got four now, because you've got Chinese, English, Greek, and Latin by the time you learn all of those anatomical terms. And you're right, because there is really a second language that you learn there with all the anatomical terms and all of the terminology, and then knowing whether that's how you talk to a patient versus to another professional. That's an additional challenge. And are there any other challenges like that you can think of that you've overcome now that you're at this stage and you're working in Australia as a physio?
I think mainly just like the communication. I think it's my main challenge, and then it's kind of like in different ways as we discussed. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're doing such a good job with it. If we could talk to our students again and try to so this we're quite open with this. We want the students to come along and take advantage of these opportunities and do the program and improve their clinical communication skills. You're someone who's now at the other end. You're 2 years graduated as a physiotherapist. You're out there working, and you use clinical communication every day to help people in the clinic, and you've done a really good job with developing that important part of your clinical skill set. But if you're in first and second year physio studying, you may not see the importance of that yet. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So if you were deciding whether or not you'd come along to Jo's sessions next week, the clinical communication sessions, what message could you give to our students if they were listening to this? Try to sell it to them.
Well, it's when I was started, like they're always like team times and food there, like it's good, like
good.
Like there's good food there, and then
Jo brings food. Good, very good.
And then you got to talk with your friends, and then talk with lecturers. You can ask questions, and then you can get the opportunity to practice. Well, like you only get to practice when you are on OSCE, so why not practice a bit earlier and with someone to give you feedback? So, yeah.
Yeah. Nothing helps nervousness and anxiety like doing work and practicing. Yeah. And putting the reps in. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a couple of points there that you've made that we'll come back to. The importance of being outgoing when possible. Everyone's got a different personality, but trying to talk to lots of different people and getting their perspectives, and the importance of having a group of people that you work with, a study group, and then the importance of practicing those skills. So a lot of the communication skills we develop, you can take for granted because you think it's a bit like the fish in water, and the fish doesn't realize it's in water. We're using these skills all the time. That's why it's really nice to talk to you, someone who's had to really work hard to develop these skills, and think about the process that you went through it. And a big part of the process was work and putting time in and practicing, and then not doing it on your own. You can't communicate with yourself. You can practice scripts and things that can be helpful, having checklists of things that you do need to cover off, like your red flags and consent and things like that. But it is important to just practice.
Yes, definitely. I think when I was on placement, there's one thing like I'm struggling with, just you mentioned consent, like because just we're not normal, like we don't normally explain everything we did, and then especially it's in a second language, like it's extremely hard. Like for example, you're just going to take the blanket away, but you probably wouldn't like as a student when you first started, it wouldn't be like, we're just going to take the blanket away now. It would probably be a little bit cold. Like just that, getting the consent from the patient, even like, oh, we're just going to turning on the light now. We're going to do this test, which involves, bending your knees and this kind of things. When I first started, yes, definitely like that automatically explaining, it's probably absent. Like you probably more think of, oh, I have to explain this, and explain it and then do it. But with the other, small things, you're probably too focused and then you forgot to explain it. So definitely more practice and that informed consent all the time. In it practice. Yeah. 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 Mm. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Um, I think like the theory part of learning for that 2.5 years, um they it's kind of linked together. Like I really like the structured learning at Monash. Like they teach you something um like anatomically, physiologically, like related to that physio problem. And then in that same week, you kind of having that case-based learning, which is related to all the things. So it's all applicable. So you kind of started to build your clinical reasoning bit by bit for the first 2.5 years. So by the time you go into placement, you have definitely enough clinical reasoning to do like the basic assessment and then like the basic treatment, and you can definitely figure out the physio problems there. I think also like how the structured um, learning at Monash, it give you a lot of practice. You get to practice that skills like all the time as well. Um, for example, like you will definitely practice to do different kind of like ligament tests and stuff. Well, like it will come with handy because when you had that doing placement, you wouldn't be like reading the books and then it was like, oh, it doesn't make sense at all. It's something you have done before and then you can just watch the video again and then you kind of refresh and then you can do it. Mm, yeah. It's actually like a really big group. I think there's 12 or 14 of us. Yeah, so it's a big group with local students and also international students. I think from like study wise, like they like because English is their first language, sometimes it's easier for them to like learn it and then understand it a little bit better. So it's give us like a chance to make sure we actually understand the right thing. Like sometimes, like it's quite easy for English as a second language for us um to misunderstand. Like you thought it's this way, but actually it's the other way. And also the second thing is like, I think as the English as us for us international students, like maybe like when you just mention something like in one sentence and stuff, it's really easier for us just to miss that information. Like for example, especially like it's not written or something, like when I'm with that group, they will be like, oh, just reminder, we got like a quiz next week and stuff. And I was like, oh, we've got a quiz. Like, yeah. So I think, yeah, it's really nice. They kind of, help us with study and also like just give us head up, make sure, oh, there's quiz next week, make sure get prepared and stuff. And then also like friends wise, like cultural wise, we got to know like, they will introduce me like this is the, traditional like local Australian foods and stuff like that. So it's kind of dive into the culture as well. Mm, definitely. Before, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Seven, you've given us a really interesting summary of what it was actually like to come to Australia and to study, and some of the challenges and some of the fun you've had as well, and some of the tips um, that you've given us for your study. Do you have any final bits of advice that you want to give to our students who are listening to this, or any final thoughts you'd like to add?
I think just keep practicing, like practice with your friends. I think practice in the community is really important as well. Like I think when I was a student, I didn't really try to find another job and then try to kind of work in the community and see like what feel like to get practice how you communicate with community.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so just keep practicing with your communication, talk to different people. I think the second thing is, yeah, do study research. Like research is the important part. Like as a practitioner, like you have to read a lot of research papers, like make sure you're evidence based, like how you can understand that article like in a short amount of time and then go to the places where you want to find the details you want. So it's a really important skills.
Oh, we're very
Yeah.
lucky these days on that topic of having so many evidence summaries. It's almost a skill now we need to add to our training. And what we do is being an educated consumer of research, but also being educated about where the resources are and being aware
Yeah.
of where you can go. And that there's so many summaries we could talk about. And there's so many good artificial intelligence applications as well at the moment that can help summarize.
Is
And
it?
help. Well, yeah, maybe there's a whole nother episode there as well. But I feel like there's obviously problems, ethical problems, and other problems that many people have discussed online about those about AI. But in terms of access for people and in helping, with communication, there's some amazing applications there as well. But look, Seven, that was a really nice introduction to you and what you've done, and some tips for our students who might be listening to this in terms of improving and developing their communication skills. So thank you for coming on again. It was really good. We'll have to do it again and perhaps talk about some of the research you were mentioning, and
Yeah, sure.
and also some of your clinical tips as well. So this episode was really focused on your communication journey and what you've perhaps the university focused side of that, of your communication training. And there's plenty more we can talk about in terms of your work as a new grad. And we've got a new grad series on this podcast, which you could be a part of if you like as well, where I'm talking about just personal experiences of being a new grad clinician. There's lots you've touched on there that might be relevant. But until next time, let's leave it there. And thanks very much.
Thank you. See you next time.
So until next time, this is Seven Shan and Luke Perrotton wishing you all the very best with your studying, professional development, and lifelong learning.